If you're getting ready for back-to-school shopping, you might want to consider some advice from the consumer protection group MASSPIRG. To tell us about some potential hazards found in school supplies are two guests from the MASSPIRG Education Fund, the Executive Director, Janet Dominitz, and the Policy Intern, Natanya Perlis. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having us.
I want to start with Janet. Before we get into some of the products here, who are the authorities you're going with about the hazards?
Well, that's such a good and complicated question. We start with the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which is a federal agency, and we encourage people to look at that. In fact, there's a part of the website, www.recalls.org, where you can always check about unsafe products.
Now, is this a government website you're talking about?
Yes,
Yeah.
This is a federal government agency.
So it might be a .gov too, or something like that as
yes,
well. Yeah.
Yes. But you have identified a problem, which is there are thousands of chemicals that are on the market in everyday products which haven't yet been tested. And that's one of the reasons why we've put resources into doing reports like this, because there's so much public education needed. So much more rigor should be put towards standards. And this is, our effort to get our decision makers moving in that direction.
And Tanya, I'm going to have you start with one of these everyday products. Certainly I grew up with, when I was a kid, the crayons. What about the crayons?
So these crayons were purchased at the Dollar Tree for $1, and when they were tested in a lab in Chicago, they found trace amounts of asbestos, which is a chemical that can cause lung cancer and mesothelioma. So that's really bad. And kids put things in their mouths, crayons included, and so you really don't want your kid putting this in your mouth. So these we found problems with, but luckily we also found plenty of crayons that are perfectly safe to use. So these crayons, which you can also purchase at the Dollar Tree.
I remember the Crayola brand when I was a kid, yeah.
Yeah, I think these are ones that everyone can recognize, and these are safe. We tested them, and they tested negative for asbestos. And one thing that you can look for when you're shopping is this label, which is also on the back of these crayons, and that shows that they have been tested and they're non-toxic. So that can also be found on like Elmer's glue, for example, and that's a really great sign when you're looking, especially with crayons, to know which ones are good products.
And I don't want to overcomplicate things, but as we were talking earlier, just because a product is legal to be on the shelf, and so I'm sure one of the things Dollar Tree
says that they meet the legal and scientific standard. They do independent testing.
Right, but that does not mean they are safe. And so, again, that's part of our effort here. We have plenty of research in the scientific and environmental community to show that we don't want children exposed to any amount of asbestos, even though those crayons are legally on the shelves.
Natanya, when I hear asbestos, I think of people working in a building in clouds of toxic dust. I mean, a crayon, is there enough asbestos in a crayon to be really harmful, you think?
Well, we found that we really don't want any level of asbestos being exposed to our children. And when there are other crayons that are being able to be produced without any, it should be obvious that you can make them without any asbestos.
Now, another product here, a 3-ring binder. Well, what could go wrong with the 3-ring binder?
Yes. Well, we tested this binder, a Jot brand binder that we also purchased at the Dollar Tree, and it contains high level of 2 phthalates, and these are chemicals that can cause developmental problems in children. And so while the legal limit in children's products for these chemicals is 1,000 parts per million, in this binder there were 240,000 parts per million of DEHP and 8,000 parts per million of DINP.
Which are toxic chemicals.
And of course, the issue here is not just about human exposure, but what it's like when the child, explain some of those differences.
Right, everything about a child is still developing. So, their organs, their brain, and as Natanya said, they may not have the same habits that adults do in terms of what they put in their mouth or how often, their hygiene. So the threat level is higher, and, they're precious. Our children, we need to protect them, so.
This has been the news. We're talking with Janet Dominitz and Natanya Perlis from the MASSPIRG Education Fund. Natanya, dry erase markers, what are you worried about with those?
Yes. So dry erase markers can contain chemicals like benzene and toluene. So these markers, which actually say non-toxic on the label that were purchased from Amazon, when we tested them, we found those chemicals. And so we definitely want to stay away from these. And another brand of markers that many people are familiar with is these Expo Markers. And so with Expo Markers, what you want to watch out for is when it's really advertising the scent. So these are supposed to smell like things. We recommend that you go for low or odor Expo Markers.
And what do the chemicals in these things do that might be harmful?
Well, in the markers, there's a lot of long,
They call it volatile organic compounds or
right,
something.
right.
Okay.
There's a combination of exposure problems. One is just inhaling fumes, which is one of the reasons why we go for the scentless ones. But the other is, if you touch them, and then you eat something or you put your fingers in your mouth, you can ingest, you can inhale. And the other problem is I shouldn't say the problem. As Natanya said, there are alternatives that are safe. So we know that we can make these things with no toxic chemical exposure whatsoever. And, it's a shortcut that we shouldn't be taking, that these products exist with these elements in them.
Tanya, what about the glue?
The glue we brought in as an example of being a safe, good product. It was tested negative for lead. All the glues that we included in our report tested negative for lead. And this is another example of where on the back, it's really small, but again, it's this logo, which is the Art and Creative Materials Institute. And it's a toxic-free certified AP label. So on glue, on crayons, if you look for this logo, it should be just on the back. That means you're in the clear.
And Jenna, what do you want some of the retailers or even manufacturers to do about these products?
Well, I think, as we're saying, there are, in almost every instance, we found a safe version of a marker, a 3-ring binder, a bottle of glue. We're really encouraging retailers as well as consumers to understand the difference between, safe products and toxic products. And I think as we get information like this out there, retailers and manufacturers can easily make different choices that are safer and healthier for our society and for our kids.
Now, for the public agencies to protect us, should they change their rules or standards, or should they just simply test more often?
They should do, the answer to all of that is yes. We need more testing, we need higher standards, we need more uniformity between the state and the federal agencies. It's almost like the Wild West out there as far as toxic chemicals go. There are tens of thousands that are in everyday products that remain untested. So we need all of what you said and more.
And of course, you have a lot of things listed in your guide. It's free, and how can people get it?
Of course. The guide, this is the cover right here. It's called the Safer School Supplies Shopping Guide. It's on our website at www.masspirgedfund.org. You can download it. There are pictures of the products to make it easier when you're shopping. And there are also lists of agencies that you can both get more information from. And we also encourage people to contact their elected officials and ask for higher standards, more testing, more education about what's on the marketplace.
Thank you both very much, Janet Dominitz and Natanya Perlis from the MASSPIRG Education Fund. We'll have more news in just a moment.